Assalamualaikum and a very good morning, everyone. My name is Suraya, and on behalf of MICPA, I would like to welcome you to our virtual forum titled Women Who Count as we celebrate International Women's Day today. Thank you so much for your time in joining us and our wonderful panel of speakers for today's event. Before we commence, some quick housekeeping. Kindly ensure that your microphone is muted to avoid any distractions. Okay, we will be having a group photo towards the end of the session. Okay, it will be great to see you all, so we hope you won't mind turning on your camera for a short while later if you are able to. If you have any questions at any point during the forum, please type them into the chat box. Okay, we will address them during the Q&A session at the end. Now to students, we will be issuing e-certificates for your attendance. Participants will be issued a cert for attendance and must have completed the feedback form at the end of the forum. Okay, I will be sharing a QR code at the end of the forum for you to scan. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator for the panel discussion who will be kicking off the session. Okay, Sangeeta Seladurai is a financial consultant at 3S Teguh Transport Sdn Bhd. She has 7 years of experience handling multi-locations audits and audit-related assignments and was an assurance manager of PwC Malaysia. Her portfolio of clients includes a wide range of public listed and multinational companies in various industries. She is graduate of the University of New South Wales and is a full member of MICPA in Cairns, who undertook the MICPA program, winning the Most Outstanding CPA Award 2016. Without further delay, I will now pass the session to our moderator, Sangeeta. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Saraya. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the International Women's Day virtual forum titled Women Who Count. My name is Sangeeta. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all the panelists and participants joining us today. Today, we are celebrating a very special day, International Women's Day, and today's forum, we will be covering a few interesting topics that relate to this year's theme, Break the Bias. We are so privileged to have 3 strong, inspirational female accounting professionals on our panel. Allow me to first introduce them to you. Cheryl Chi, MICPA member and Chief Financial Officer of Taylor's University. Cheryl Chi is responsible for handling all aspects of financial matters for Taylor's University and Taylor's College. She has extensive experience in accounting, tax, financial planning and analysis with the commercial and professional services environment. Cheryl started her career with PricewaterhouseCoopers, at that time Pricewaterhouse, and after almost 6 years in the audit profession, she moved on to an American scientific equipment trading company, Fisher Scientific, for a short stint. And after that joined Moët Hennessy Diageo, a multinational joint venture company trading in premium wines and spirits. Cheryl is a member of Malaysian Institute of Accountants, MIA, and MICPA. Next, we have Sim Kuang Gek, MICPA member and Managing Director of Deloitte Tax Services Sdn Bhd. Sim Kuang Gek has more than 20 years of experience in providing tax and business consulting services for local and multinational corporations in various industries. She has led various assignments such as restructuring of operations, mergers and acquisitions, incentive evaluation and applications, regulatory applications to various government agencies, as well as managing the tax compliance affair of a portfolio of clients. Kuang Gek holds a Bachelor of Accounting from University of Malaya and is a member of MICPA. In addition to that, she's also a member of the Chartered Institute of Malaysia, Chartered Tax Institute of Malaysia, and MIA. Last but certainly not the least, Shahnaz Al-Sadat, MICPA member and chairperson of Leap Ad Services Sdn Bhd. Shahnaz is an independent advocate and promoter of education, talent development, and social enterprising reform in the interest of Malaysia and the community at large. She has 20 years of corporate experience, including a decade in the government-linked companies, specifically through the Sovereign Wealth Fund, Khazanah Nasional. In the past 10 years, through her social enterprises and the TFM Foundation, Shahnaz has been working on catalyzing the development of future generation through transformation of the government schools, championing youth leadership development, and undertaking projects with the view to close gap of disparities. She is also a CPA and a member of MICPA. Shahnaz, however, accounts her real job as being a mother to her 9-year-old daughter. She loves reading novels and traveling to random areas in her very limited free time. Now that you have a glimpse of our remarkable panelists, I will jump right into the meat of this forum by starting with perhaps getting each one of our panelists to share their career journey with us, starting from when you took up the MICPA qualification and how did MICPA play a role in your rise up the career ladder. Maybe we can start with Cheryl G.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much to MICPA for inviting me to join the forum. I think the introduction has really covered the gist of my career journey, actually. But of course, it started a little bit earlier than that. When I completed my Form 6 after the STPM, I joined Pricewaterhouse as an audit trainee at that point of time. And I was actually considering doing an articleship, and taking up MICPA while gaining working experience at the same time. But when I got an offer from University Malaya to study there, my family encouraged me to pursue my degree first. So 4 years later, armed with my degree in accounting, I rejoined Pricewaterhouse. And with that degree, I received exemptions. So I only needed to take up, I think, the final stage of MICPA. I still remember the times when I had to go to this center in Kampung Atap to attend evening classes. And also, the joy of having study leave, because in audit, it's quite challenging to be able to, work and study at the same time. So MICPA exams were quite well known to be of high standards, and the passing rates were pretty low. So it was a proud moment for me to be able to call myself a full member of MICPA after passing the exams, as well as completing the mandatory 3 years of work experience. I think the MICPA qualification certainly did elevate my profile and was a selling point when I was being selected for job interviews, particularly at the earlier stage of my career, because at that point of time, my career experience was still not strong enough to stand on its own. So after about 6 years with PricewaterhouseCoopers, I moved into trading business environment where, as Sangeeta said, I joined the trading business. And actually, for personal reasons, I did take a career break. And when I was ready to get back into the workforce about a year later, I was fortunate to be given an opportunity to join Taylor's University, where I've been with them for the last almost 3 years. So that's a little bit about myself. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Maybe can we have Kwangget to share a bit about herself as well?
All right. Thanks, Sangeeta. Good morning, everyone, and happy International Women's Day. Yeah. So my background, actually, me and Cheryl, we share some commonalities here. We were from the same firm. Yeah, although I'm with Deloitte now, but I was with PwC for 10 years and now with Deloitte for 15 years. And we were also from UM, so we have a lot of similarities there. So I took up MICPA when I joined PwC that time. So it was at that time, professional qualification is like a prerequisite for us. Yeah, an accounting degree is not sufficient. Yeah, you need to have a professional qualification in order for you to progress. Yeah, so I took up MICPA. So I was one of the few people that chose taxation as a career. I know that time when I graduated, all of my friends went to audit. I think I'm like one of those 5 people that chose taxation. Yeah. So like what Cheryl said, MICPA was at that time, and also at today also, is a very prestigious kind of qualification, but it was also a very tough one, I must say. Yeah, to be honest, I have to tell you this, I failed twice. Okay, and almost wanted to give up. but decided to try again. And you know, like the saying goes, right? Third time is a charm, and I finally passed. You know, when I passed MECPA, it was one of the most, you know, the fulfilling moment. You know, the moment when I passed MECPA, I was so proud. I was so happy because why? Because it then will help me to progress further. Yeah. So after that I moved on to Deloitte, and now I've been with Deloitte for 15 years already, and I'm currently the country tax leader for Deloitte Malaysia.
Thank you so much, Kongek. And Shanas, maybe we can have a bit about yourself as well.
Sure. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to everybody, and happy International Women's Day as well. Wow. Okay. So, trying to remember what happened 30 years ago was a little bit of a challenge. But I think the moment I remember when at that time was MACPA years were very, character development, one of the defining moment in my character development actually, because it wasn't easy, as you've heard. But for me, I think I wanted to become a professional accountant since I was 16 years old. I love numbers, and I wanted to do something for the country. That was my ambition, and I felt that being an accountant would be the best way to do it. Little did I know how difficult it was, but that was then. And then I went to the UK to do my degree. But in the UK, people do not have to do accounting degree to be a professional accountant. So I actually did LLB law. So I had a law degree actually. And then I changed my mind. I wanted to continue my professional. I mean, I completed my degree, but I didn't want to continue my professional accounting in the UK. I wanted to come back to Malaysia, to be honest, because I miss my mom, and I miss the food. UK food was horrible. So yeah, and so when I came back to Malaysia, I didn't have a choice. It's very unlike today. I think today people still you can do ICAW, ACCA, and all that. But in that day, you want to come back Malaysia, you have to do MACPA and nothing else. And I think I was the first, if not among the first, that didn't have an accounting degree. So I had a law degree, wanting to do a CPA, MACPA. So I had to start from foundation, okay? So I actually started from foundation for MACPA. For 3 years, I do not know what miracle happened, blood, sweat, and tears. I actually passed everything first time. So, but it was really truly a character development defining moment for me, because it taught me a lot around multitasking, time management, resiliency, being focused, and actually having courage to do something that's completely different. So from then on, I mean, my career, I cut it into 10. So I have three 10 years. The first 10 years, I was in Arthur Andersen doing my MICPA at that time. And then as well as I stayed there for another 5 years. The world was really like my oyster. So I could do corporate finance, I could do M&A, I did risk consulting, I did all sorts of things. Actually, that gave me the opportunity to do my next 10 years. My next 10 years, I wanted to come closer to nation building. And yeah, I didn't have a gut to join government. So I actually joined the government link companies. So I joined Malaysia Airlines, and then I became the CFO of Khazanah. I actually was the first CFO of Khazanah under Tan Sri Azman Mokhtar. So stayed for 10 years in the government link investment company, and then wanted to come closer to community or people. So I decided to leave and then became a social entrepreneur. So for the last 10 years, been working in social, establishing my own social enterprises. Today I have 3 social enterprises that I work very closely with. One is called Arise. The other one is called Teach for Malaysia Foundation. And the third one is Leap Ed Services. Basically fighting for education quality for everybody, because we believe that each child deserves a great future. So yeah, so that's kind of the career that I had.
Thank you so much, Shanas. It's been great listening to how starting off with the professional qualification in MECPA has propelled the career of all our panelists. Maybe I'll just add on a bit on my experience as well. Having the professional qualification with MECPA has definitely sort of catapulted my career, especially after winning an award. It's always a good thing, and it got people noticing me and giving me better projects, I guess. I got to work on better projects. I got better opportunities come my way ever since as well. While I can be considered an infant member to the MICPA program in comparison to all our panelists here, I've noticed that the papers or the program itself has evolved tremendously since I did it back in 2014. Recently, I know that there's been a great change in the program structure, and there's some amazing elective courses like financial modeling, data analytics, insight, strategy, and performance. And all of these are going to be very relevant to the industry, like what we do in the industry. So looking forward to learning a lot more about that in the coming future. Well, now allow me to get into a heavier section, challenges on gender equality. Workplace gender biases come in many different forms. Do you think gender bias still exists today in our country and work culture? Have you encountered such a situation in your career journey? How did you handle them? Maybe Cheryl, could you take this one?
Sure. Well, Sangeeta, firstly, I think it's great to hear that the MICPA syllabus has also evolved a lot. What you've described was definitely nowhere near what we were studying. And definitely what you described is really relevant for what we are facing right now in the latest technology and evolutions of how we are doing our work. So back to the question, I guess gender biasness still, of course, exists in our society. I mean, you just listen to casual conversations about lady drivers, about men who don't listen, for example. Yeah, I think in the work environment, the tendency to generalize and ascribe certain characteristics or behaviors to a person based on their gender definitely still exists. I'm afraid I might have also been guilty of saying that men tend to focus on the bigger picture, they are not so patient with details. And I'm sure we have all heard about, people saying women are a bit more, detailed or petty or even emotional. Yeah. But I think every person is different. I've certainly met people who are quite the polar opposites of these generalizations. For myself, I think I have been very lucky. I had never really felt constrained by the gender biasness that I had encountered. When we're at work, I feel that the focus should be on output and results. That should be the primary consideration. And I feel very fortunate that my colleagues and my superiors had recognized my achievements and performance based on merit. And my thick skin and selective hearing is activated when I hear obviously gender-based, remarks or comments, and I don't take such comments too seriously, though it can be really irritating. While not my personal experience, I have observed definitely more disturbing gender bias discriminations, which affects hiring, pay scales, and promotions, for example. And I think the severity of all this may vary depending on the industry and the nature of work. In the line of accounting, probably the bias is actually a bit more favorable towards womankind, actually, because if you see a lot of accountants tends to be women, yeah, because of the generalization that we are probably better at details and stuff like that. Yeah, but I think as you go higher level, when you reach senior management, certainly the glass ceiling gets more real. Yeah, to step up to be, at the senior management level, that can really feel that you are a bit more constrained. Yeah. And I think culturally, because women are still expected to play a more nurturing role, handle the family, the household, even if we are juggling a full-time and demanding career. So I do see discrimination, such as like people doubting the commitment of a pregnant woman, or women with children, especially young children. And this I actually did feel to a certain extent, where it makes me feel more obligated that I have to do more to prove myself that, being pregnant, being a breastfeeding mother, it doesn't affect my work and my commitment. And definitely this puts a lot of strain and pressure on us. I really don't have an answer to this, yeah, but I guess forums like this, which I hope there are men in this audience, yeah, which creates more awareness of women's rights. And for us, I guess, guiding the next generation, I think the current generation may be a bit difficult for us to make a change easily, but maybe guiding the next generation of people, male, female, who are more enlightened, yeah, where I do see more men now more willing to help around the house, you know, more involved, yeah. So I think if we are able to guide the new generation to be more enlightened about all this, I think it will be helpful. But ultimately, I think each of us, we must believe in ourselves and fight for our rights for a more level playing field. So I think that's my take on it.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Just to add on a bit on that, I think while gender biasness might not be so prevalent in the accounting or finance industry, I have sort of witnessed it myself, like having colleagues who were guilty to be on maternity leave during peak period, right? So I hope there will be a time that comes where, you know, women can freely take their maternity leave and exercise their rights without having to feel this guilt. To that, perhaps, Kwangek, could you share your view? What are the common barriers to women's workplace equality that young female professionals may encounter in the accounting profession? And how can women address these challenges?
Sorry, I was on mute just now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just bringing on to what Cheryl has mentioned just now, I also agree with her. I mean, based on my personal experience, right, I do not think that the accounting profession is a male-dominated field. I do not see that. In fact, I'm in tax, right? In Deloitte tax, the practice, we have actually more female staff than male. In the universities, if I go to the universities to give career coaching and so on, I see a lot of female students. Yeah, but one observation which I totally agree with Cheryl is that you see number of female professionals at the starting level. There's a lot, yeah. But if you move on to the senior positions, then you will see that women actually trails behind when it comes to holding decision-making positions, the higher level position. And why is that? So now we talk about the barrier. I think it's the, like Cheryl was saying just now about, you know, as you grow and then you have a family, so you have to choose between, you know, family versus career. That's what I observe in my style. Yeah, the you know, woman's natural instinct to care for the family, and they tend to, you know, sacrifice the career aspiration. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think organizations can do something to support women that are, you know, have the potential to even grow further. Yeah, so this is something that is perhaps in our Asian culture is more prevalent, yeah, where you want to spend say a certain number of years to care for your family, and then after that, when they want to come back, how do we support them? Yeah. The other barrier I would say is women themselves. I think how you see yourself. Yeah. How confident are you? Are you building a glass ceiling on top of you? Yeah, you have to be, you know, without fear. You have to take the courage to do something. If we ourselves do not think that we are able to catch up, then I think you know, no matter how many programs or support that we can have, we may not be able to reach there. I think one important thing is women themselves have to really, you know, show it, have the courage to do it. So that's my view, Sangeeta.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very interesting point. I think sometimes we are our biggest critic, and we tend to think that, you know, this we have to prioritize our family.
Yeah. We like perfectionists as well.
It can be a good thing or a bad thing. Yes, so in this sense, yeah. So yeah, I hope like people can look past that and then look to be better versions of themselves and strive to be, like, you know, take on more prominent roles in the workplace. finally, we have Shanas, who probably can share a bit about your vast experience. What are your thoughts with your vast experience? What are your thoughts on gender bias or equality within our education system? How does it exist and how can such disparities be reduced? As a parent or a guardian, what would you advise your daughter about these realities and how to tackle them? So a lot of questions there, but maybe you can start by giving us a bit about how biasness, gender biases or equality is within the education system.
I think that's like one whole morning conference or seminar in itself, but we just took, if I may, I just want to probably just give a quick like kind of highlight of overview of like from a Malaysia perspective, right? So our birth rate is 50-50, male and female. That's been for the last decade or so. But if you look at and then enrollment in schools is 50-50. Okay, but when you look at going to university, which is a higher education, not just university, higher education, it becomes 70-30, 70% female and 30% males. Okay, so you wonder, right, what happens in between? Okay, right, you've lost boys, actually, you've lost some boys. And then when it comes to the middle, the executive and working level, okay, it kind of still remain at the 70-30, but as you hear the other panelists, which I completely agree, the moment you hit more like senior management kind of role, it went the reverse, right? It's 70% men, probably. It's not even 30% women yet, actually, to be honest. I think that's what we were striving for, but I don't think it's even there yet. So it's kind of interesting, right? Because from the whole perspective, and I tend to talk about this as gender equity, not equality, because it's about actually making sure that they all have opportunity that need, or that they actually need to have a very good life without being discriminated due to the gender, both sides, right? So, and I think as a country, we have to work as a team here. We need to leverage the diversity, actually. The more we work better as a diverse group, actually, we will make better decisions. We will become a better country. I mean, so that's always my lens when I actually go. When we then address the issue of from a women kind of perspective, I certainly agree with all the observations that Konget and Shara actually made. In fact, when I was a CFO Kazana, I was the only senior leadership team in Kazana, only female. And I must say, actually, I'm probably guilty of working like a man. To get there. I'll be honest, right? So and I think a lot of reflecting around it, and said, why do I have to sacrifice what I'm here for, what I could be good at, just because that because of my career, and that's etc. I mean, I'm still learning. I don't even have an answer for everybody, but I do find that at the end of the day, I have to have the courage, and Konget talk about the you yourself had to have the courage to actually make that quantum leap, make that change, and make that change. And if you keep on thinking the bias will stop you, then it will stop you, right? But if you don't, if you take it as actually an opportunity, because normally it means you have some differences that actually can add strength to the company, to the team, to whatever, then you play to that, then you actually will benefit from it. I think that's kind of what I'm kind of finding. So my advice, if I had to advise my daughter right now, I mean, you tell me what you want to do. Don't think about your girl or your boy, but actually what are you passionate about, and then finding your strengths to actually do that. And the environment, even if you're a boy, you still be discriminated to an extent in certain areas. So it doesn't matter. It's actually how you respond to the situation, the environment, and your perception, right? So if you think it's actually people discriminating against it, it will be a discrimination. But if you don't take it that way, if you take it actually, because I have differences, I have strength, I use my strength, then actually you will benefit from it. So that will be the advice I give my daughter. So that will be an advice I give other females as well. I certainly don't have an answer, to be honest, even after 30 years working, and I still see, I mean, in education, as I talked about the lost boys, right? The truth is because the quality of education are not actually up to the level that can actually engage everybody. And women generally are very obedient lot, are generally very obedient lot. And you can actually sit there for 45 minutes and teacher just talk and talk and talk and talk and you're fine, but boys can't do that. Okay, but that's not the best quality of education either, for example. So that's something we as a country really need to transform. That we need to improve how we actually get our kids to actually be engaging, actually be participating in their learning, not just receiving, right? But you actually need to be creating, you need to be communicating, you need to be collaborating. So yeah, because then I'm hoping we will have less lost boys lah. Because it's a shame when there's lost boys and then they don't get educated properly and then they become bosses and then and then question mark, right? I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, a bit controversial. The men may hate me, but I'm just pointing out facts. I mean, that's the problem, right? So if you're not going to get the level of a community level kind of education that's good for community, when you get to a position of power, then you're not going to change the way that you actually behave. So
Thank you. So just on that, maybe I just thought of sharing a bit about my experience as well. I did a small job that was, my client was predominantly all male, right? So the first 30 minutes of the conversation, they were all rolling their eyes and not interested in anything that I had to say. And this is audit, yeah. So after going through the audit findings, I think only the second half of the session where we sort of explain what are the problems they're facing and how we can help resolve it, there was a remark that the CFO said that, wow, kecil-kecil cili padi, right? So I think there's a lot of effort sometimes that you need to put in to get yourself noticed or to be taken seriously in the industry. But if you just persevere and push through, nothing is impossible, right? So maybe let's just move on to the next big topic, diversity and leadership. Undeniably, each one of you are exemplary female leaders in your respective fields. Perhaps, Cheryl, could you share some insights and practical tips on how women can build confidence and grow into a leader?
I think firstly, like what Kwang Gek as well as Shana said, the attitude, yeah, our own confidence in terms of our self-worth, and don't let, just because we are female, don't let that constrain us. I think that is like an overriding kind of thing that we have to be confident of, right? Because the moment we start saying that we are female, therefore, that by itself, you have wrapped not just a glass ceiling, but a glass bubble around us already, right? And you can't reach out to other opportunities. So I think that's, the overriding thing. But if you're talking about other insights and tips on how we can build confidence and grow into a leader, I would say fundamentally, we need to have a strong foundation of knowledge and skills for which we are going to be valued. This is quite fundamental because if we have the basics right, it really boosts our confidence. Of course, we won't be able to know everything, right? And there will be subject matter experts that we can tap on because nobody can really just know everything. But for us, in our own right, in our own field, we should be our own subject matter experts. With a solid foundation like this, and with some experience, and also some resourcefulness to do some research or homework, we would be more confident to make judgment calls. Further, I think we need to build a reputation of professional integrity and ethics. As MICPA members, we all know about code of ethics conduct, right? We need to make sure that as women, as women, sometimes we also get people looking at us a little bit more critically, right? So I think it's important for us to be confident of our professionalism. So if, let's say, there are criticisms, if they are constructive, I think we should use them for self-improvement. But we shouldn't let very obviously gender-based bias comments phase us and erode our self-confidence. We are all individually different and should not be defined by our gender, so we should just use them, our own personal strength, to our advantage. Thirdly, I think the ability to communicate and present well. In any position at any level, I think communication and negotiation skills are so important to allow us to share our viewpoints, to convince people to be aligned with us. Just having good technical skills and knowledge alone, but without the ability to bring our points across, I think would be a setback to be an effective leader. I mean, a simple example, if we are doing a business review, we cannot be showing a P&L and reading off the charts about ratios and numbers and variances, right? You need to have the ability to tell the story behind the numbers in order to engage with our audience and let them understand what we're trying to say. Sometimes, I've been in meetings where someone, is trying to tell me something and they need to show me their calculation, use a calculator or formula and all that. And to me, if you have to use a calculator to show me your rationale, it's very difficult for me to buy in, especially if you're talking to non-accounting people who are not so sensitive to numbers. Yeah, so the ability to present is very important. Also, I think as a woman leader, I think sometimes we can utilize those traits that people consider as weaknesses to our advantage to be an effective leader. Some people say women are emotional. Well, in a professional setting, if we harness it right, it can also mean that we can be good listeners. It can also mean that we can be more empathetic when we are dealing with difficult situations. So we are different. I mean, male and female, there are differences. We are wired a little bit differently, and we should not, try too hard to put away our natural tendencies, but we try to make use of them to our advantage. One more thing, which I think just now Kwang Gek and also Sangeeta mentioned, we are our worst critics. The tendency for women to self-talk and doubt ourselves, are we making the right decisions? Are we doing the right things? Is quite common, I think. For me, we try to use this to our advantage instead of making this erode our self-confidence. Use this to be part of our self-awareness, to try to understand ourselves and improve. That to me is important, because if we keep doubting ourselves in a negative way, it will be very difficult for us to progress as well. And I think, if as a leader, your subordinates will sense that. I think having said all this, right, I definitely have not perfected the skill of being a good leader. I far from it. As in all things, it's really easier said than done. I'm still learning every day, and I do hear feedback, criticisms, of the way I'm doing certain things, and I would always try to keep an open mind to learning from it as well. So it's still a journey, work in progress. Thanks, Sangeeta.
Thank you, Cheryl. Listening to you really tug a chord at me as well. I think a lot of the learning points that you mentioned earlier with reference to, showing formulas and things like that, those are all things that I certainly went through, in my younger days as a young auditor, like having to struggle to convey my ideas or thoughts. And every time I look at someone as a leader, or I find someone to be a strong leader, they always have certain set of criteria, right? Someone who has strong technical skills, someone who can convey their viewpoint clearly, and can engage us well and engage our clients well. I have a lot of respect for them. So I think those are common traits that we look in our leader, and certainly those are skills and qualities that we should harness throughout our journey. Moving on, a diverse workplace provides equal rights and opportunity for all. As a leader in your organization, what would you do to create a more diverse workplace? How can the workplace be inclusive towards these women? Kwang Gek, maybe we can get some pointers from you.
All right, thanks, Sangeeta. So creating an inclusive workplace, to me, first of all, it has to be a tone from the top. Yeah, and leadership by example. It has got to be that way, and it trickles, then it will trickle down. Yeah. So I maybe I just share with you Deloitte, from Deloitte standpoint, because I'm in Deloitte, right? So we have a global strategy. We call it all-in strategy. We are all in it together. So it's our global commitment, yeah, to embrace diversity and inclusion. And we want to have equal opportunity for everyone to develop, to grow, and to succeed. And how do we do that? We make sure that everyone is committed to this mandate, yeah. And for that, we have certain programs, yeah, that we roll out. For example, accelerating representation of women in leadership roles. Yeah, how do we do that? We actually we set a target for ourselves. Like me, I'm the country tax leader, right? So when I want to look at, you know, partner promotion, we consciously set a target for ourselves, how many female potentials that we have, and we want to accelerate them. Yeah, so we consciously do that. Yeah, and we also have some very robust mentoring program for females. Yeah, we have executive coaching modules for women leaders, those that we believe that they can, you know, they have the great potential to develop and to grow further. So we have that. We also have this sponsorship program. So sponsorship is very different from coaching. Coaching, so you're like mentoring and coaching someone. But sponsoring would be you actually sponsor someone and you advocate someone, and you have a customized career plan for that particular individual. So we sponsor that individual. I myself, I have one. So I share my experience with that person, and I tailor a career path for that person. And, you know, along the way, I advocate and I sponsor that someone. And how do I do that? I involve her in some of the, you know, the more complex projects to showcase her responsibility and her leadership. Yeah, so that's one of the mentoring, or I call it sponsorship program that we have. Other than that, I think other organizations are having it flexible working arrangement. I think this is very common nowadays in view of COVID, right? Over the last 2 years, we have that. We have been working partly at home, partly in office, and I think this is going to be the, you know, the way forward for most organizations. And one more would be, what we have is called the Working Parents Community Program. Yeah, we encourage working families to connect, to share their experiences, and to access a wide variety of resources. We want to show people that, you know, you can have a successful career, you can also be a great parent. Yeah, you can achieve both simultaneously. It is possible. So we do that, and we actually wanted to get parents, you know, to come to the office and share their experience. But over the last 2 years, because of COVID, we couldn't do that. Yeah, and one more thing that we did was we call it the panel promise. Panel promise, where we make it an effort to ensure that whenever we are invited to speaking engagements or panel sessions, we want to advocate balanced gender representation, making ourselves heard. So today we have all females, we don't have males. But we have this panel promise where we want to make sure that, you know, in any forum there is a balanced gender representation. Yeah, so that's some of the examples that we do, yeah, to advocate inclusivity in our workplace.
Thank you so much, Panggek. I think a lot of companies or corporations right now are implementing a lot of initiatives to provide equal rights for both male and female. We've got like extended maternity leave for the male parent and the female parent. We've got reduced working days as well. I think a lot of times there are all these options or availability out there. It's just that we don't take initiative to exercise it, or we don't ask, afraid of, you know, losing the next promotion cycle, or afraid of having our bonuses cut. I think there needs to be some give and take. But yeah, there is opportunity out there. We just need to look out for it and take advantage of it. To extend on the point earlier, what about leadership as an entrepreneur and diversity in entrepreneurship? Perhaps Shanas, could you share your thoughts on this?
Yes, sure, Sangeeta. I am certainly not an exemplary leader by any measures. I think, as I agree with Cheryl, to me, it's a work in progress. Still learning, even though I'm probably going to be retiring soon, but I'm still learning. Uh, but from an entrepreneurship perspective, just to say, given that I have both, I guess, 20 years of corporate experience and then about last decade as an entrepreneur, social entrepreneur. For me, it's not a question of easy or hard. I think all will have their own challenges. They're just different, maybe. But I think for a female, for in the situation, especially today, actually more and more women are actually going in to be entrepreneurs, right? Because it does, I guess, to a certain extent, give a bit more of maybe to say a bit more free hand, I guess, or you have a bit more flexibility, I think, in managing maybe. Especially if you have your family and all that, so entrepreneurship does give you a bit more flexibility around your time, around what is it that you actually want to do, as opposed to if you're actually in an employment, actually working for someone else. But it does come with its own challenges. It's high risk, right? It's not as job secured, if you want to look that way. It does requires a lot more the skills around. I mean, when you're working, different skills are required when you're working with corporates, and you can actually kind of maybe specialize in particular thing. But as an entrepreneur, sometimes you got to know all. You may not an expert in all, but you got to know all, and you need to know to find people to support you in some of these areas that maybe you're not strong at, but you need to know all. You need to have the acumen around, how do I actually manage the whole organization. So, but today we are seeing a lot of that trends is actually coming out in Malaysia. There are more women actually coming into the entrepreneurship world. I guess the issue now, or the struggle, or the challenge, I mean, listening to all your ideas actually, because then how do you then create an ecosystem that can support women in this space? The networking is one, but it's just a question of supporting, because it's higher risk, it's less secured. And how do you then give them maybe access to some skills like marketing, that they may not have, in order to make it successful. So it is a trend, actually. It's becoming a big trend. And I can tell you, a lot of lenders, financial lenders, actually, well, this is a thing when people say about gender bias. I say, well, then these poor men, right? Because they're actually biases, as in, like, if you're female, you get higher points, all right, for business loans. Because female normally pay back their loans, I think like 85 or 90%. I mean, that's like a world kind of data points showing you, but men probably only have 50-60%. So they give you higher points actually for female. So that's why when people talk about female bias, sometimes I feel bad, because actually there are biases also right on this side. But yeah, so actually more business loans are being given to females nowadays. So if you as an entrepreneur, actually you can get more support. If you want actually to run your own businesses, you actually can get more support financially, really. I mean, this is not just Malaysia, by the way. This is like global, and Malaysia is following suit. So yeah. So that's just to say, I mean, I actually don't know. The only reason why I became an entrepreneur, just because I felt that it gave me more room to do the social impact work that I wanted to do. I mean, working with Kazana and all that was great, but it's very national level, very strategic level. Can't quite come to the individual family and people that you want to help. So I then chose entrepreneurship. I thought that would be the best to give me actually a leeway. But I'm learning along the way and say, oh yeah, okay, so it does. I mean, it can have that kind of advantage. And today I'm meeting like fantastic, young talents who came out just from university, like, Sangeeta, not quite, maybe in the first like 10 years of their career, and they're already like very good entrepreneurs. So, so I'm learning from the young ones now in that sense. So it's just to say that it is a space that's kind of coming up, I think. And yeah, I mean, but yeah, I don't see why women should not do it. Women certainly have the entrepreneurial instincts, and the acumen for it. Uh, so that's just some landscape views.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shanas. I personally actually have a friend who left the Big Four to start her own tudong line. And she talked about how she got grants to support the business. And I think the grant was specifically for female entrepreneurs. And I think she's doing really great for herself, and is a lot more happy, like she's way happier, I guess. And also she really, the main reason for her to choose changing career paths is for the flexibility. She's a mother of like a small, I think 4 or 5-year-old kid. So yeah, there are definitely a lot of changes, and I've seen a lot more of my friends have some side business, like, while they have a full-time job. So there's certainly opportunities there. Moving on to a big area of interest, and my personal area of interest as well, balanced lifestyle. As a woman progresses in their career and life, family responsibilities come into the picture. Starting a family and having children, or taking care of the elderly, to name a few. Maybe Cheryl, what was your own experience like, and how did you balance your time?
This one, this topic is something which I think is very, very difficult to answer, and please don't expect good advice from me. I'll share with you my experiences, but you'll realize that I've also made a lot of bad choices when it comes to this. I think Kwang Gek earlier said was it Kwang Gek who said, there have been women who had to make choices, between family or career. Shana said she had to work like a man practically, right, to progress. And I think just now, Sangeeta, you were the one also who said you saw colleagues who felt guilty about taking maternity leave, right? And worry that all this would affect our career progression, performance evaluation, bonus, and all that. So these are very real, because we are made to have babies, right? How else are we going to procreate? So it's a fact of life, right? The men can't do it. They can help out, but they can't do this part of the work. And they can't breastfeed. So very unfortunately, there are certain things that is only on our shoulders, and we have to try to manage that. I have 3 children. I must say that it's really not easy juggling a family life and a demanding career. And frankly, looking back, I could have done better. I really had tried to do too much on both fronts. So in the end, like the proverbial candle that is burning on both sides, I was quite burnt out. But I was lucky in the sense that I had a good support system. I have parents who helped take care of my children. I had domestic help, and a husband who never complained about my long hours at work. I did over prioritize my work. So in a way, that was a choice that I made, because I felt a heavy commitment towards my job responsibilities. So I put in a lot of effort into work. I felt guilty because I didn't have enough time with my children. So any free time that I had was for my children. So in the end, I had no time for myself. So this, I think, was something which was quite challenging, especially when my two elder ones were young. That was the situation. It was only when I had my 3rd child, much later, I think about 7 years after, that I made a more conscious decision to seek a more balanced life. Just now we talked about, guilt of taking maternity leave. In fact, I worked throughout my maternity leaves, especially the first 2. I became a bit smarter when it comes to my 3rd one, where I negotiated with my boss. I said, I did work throughout my maternity leave. I did not leave my responsibilities unattended, because certain things we can't really delegate when you are the boss of the finance department, right? So So I negotiated for some terms with my boss where he allowed me to spend more time working from home. So in a way, I had a bit of extended maternity leave. But in those days, working from home, flexible working hours was not really that acceptable norm. But I was lucky that I had a bit of leverage to be able to negotiate that. Remember, I said negotiation still is important, yeah? So I learned from my experience is that we really cannot be too hard on ourselves, cannot demand too much on ourselves. It is important to be able to try to find a balance. I think sometimes we cannot have everything balanced. Something has to give somehow. And I guess we just have to make sure that we are managing our professional progression as well as our mental and physical well-being. We need to seek help or support when we need, negotiate for resources when necessary. And if there are setbacks, we learn from it and move on. So I think, that's how my experience was. Like I said, you can see I didn't make all the best choices, but that was my experience.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I think when I started off working as well, the second or third year, I probably experienced like a severe burnout as well. And at the end of the day, I will, typical child at the 22, 23 years old, go home and complain to my parents about it. My dad gave me like a solid, strict Indian father advice, said like, you have to own up to the decisions that you have taken. You are working so hard. Why? Because you want a promotion, then you get one. So then it's because you chose to do it that way, and then just own up to it. I don't know if I completely agree with that idea, but then I guess if we already chose that path, we just have to try and make the best out of it. And as a child, after started working, I understand the struggles that my parents faced working day and night. So Cheryl, I don't think any parent can get everything right. I'm sure you did the best that you could. Moving on, I think all of our panelists here today are professional accountants with MICPA qualifications. Perhaps Kwange, could you share how having a professional qualification helped you to stand out from the rest? And as a female leader, what are your aspirations for the accounting profession?
Thanks, Anvita. So having, like I said just now, right, having a professional qualification like MICPA, to me, it is not an option. To me, it's a natural thing to do. Yeah, when you want to work in an accounting firm, you want to venture into the accounting profession, it is not an option. Yeah, like I said, you have a degree. That degree is the ticket for you to get started. But after that, because I can tell you, in any big four, if you want to progress further, you need to have that professional qualification. So for me, I took on MICPA. It certainly gave me that added advantage, provided me the opportunity to progress further. Yeah, because in any, I think in a big four accounting firm, we always have that when you progress, let's say from a associate to a senior, and then to, let's say, AM and manager and so on, right? There will be a certain time where there will be a prerequisite to see whether that particular individual has passed MICPA or not, for example. Yeah, then after that, you can go on to the next stage of your career. And why is that important is because when you have a professional qualification like MICPA, right, you actually broaden your horizon. You get to, along the way, you have a lot of networking opportunity with MICPA members. Yeah, and you also, it really tests your resilience, your courage to take this qualifications like MICPA. Right? It's not an easy exam, I would say. Yeah, but that's why when you have many people doing, we always look at those people who have qualifications, professional qualifications like MICPA, then we will sort of shortlist them for the next level. So it is very important, if you want to be in an accounting firm. And my aspiration for the accounting profession would be to see to see more women leadership roles in the accounting profession. So I've mentioned just now, right? Women tend to trail behind when it comes to the senior positions. So this is what I hope to see, more women leadership roles in this sort of positions, and ultimately also more women representation in the boards lah. Yeah, we read in the papers where we are aware that women representation in the top 100 public listed companies, as it is, I think it's about 25%. Hopefully, you know, I believe that number can be increased, and it takes everyone's effort to make that happen. Yeah, so that's my point of view, Sangeeta.
Thank you so much, Kwang Gek. Yeah, I have to agree that the qualification is definitely like sort of a prerequisite if you want to move up the ladder in the Big Four. I think some firms even set a criteria. If you do not complete your papers, you actually can't make manager. So that kind of stops your progression at a certain point in time, and you probably have to go to a different path. A lot of commercial firms require you to have professional qualifications these days as well, because almost everyone has a degree, and now more and more people have multiple professional qualifications, in fact. So yeah, it is certainly important. And last question for this segment, what advice would you give to the next generation of female professional accountants? Shahnaz, could you take this one?
Oh, wow. Advice. Well, I completely agree that a professional qualification in itself, I think, already has value. You know, because it does differentiate you, not just the technical skills, but around your code of ethics, integrity, you know, the network that you actually have. I think it does make a difference. And I talk about character development. It does, to me, is my fundamental foundation, you know, where it actually allows me to actually have the courage to be able to switch, you know, one the other, because you know you went through that really difficult time of you know, taking the exams and working at the same time, actually, for me. But I completely enjoyed, even though it was bad, as in blood, sweat and tears thing, but I really enjoyed those time. So for me, I mean, for all professional accountants, females especially, whatever you do, I think you must have passion. You must love what you're doing. Okay, because if you don't, then you're really torturing yourself. Right? So you must like doing what you're doing. And honestly, in anything you do, you will find an opportunity, you know, of course, for yourself, for your family, for your community, for whatever. You find what it is that actually inspires you and leverage on that. For me, and for you know, I mean, as much as I was actually a planner. I mean, I kind of planned my life, like first 10 years, second, you know. But you know, I can tell you probably 90% of my plans throw out the window as you go, right? So you know, so it is okay, you know, sometimes to be able to pivot. Is all right, you know. And I completely agree about a biggest critic of ourselves, because sometimes we should try our best, we should enjoy what we do, we should try our best, we should be the best that we could in whatever we do. But you know, we don't have to be too hard on ourselves, right? Because sometimes you fail, sometimes you didn't get where you need to be, but it's okay, you know. Learn from it and then pivot, just move on. I mean, you know, and find something else that still inspires you and actually keeps you passionate. Uh, it's quite interesting, because I actually have I got my daughter much later in my life. So you know, I have my role models, which I had, like, you know, people who are in the accounting firms and all that, who have like 6 children and their partners and whatever, right? So I'm like, wow, you know, like, yeah. But these are the people I normally like look up to, because I, you know, this like, oh my god, and really can be done. I mean, you know, I have a friend who's a CEO of Quap. She has 6 kids, you know. So you know, it's very, very possible. And the kids are all doing great, you know. And so for me, I only have one. And I'm, you know, I kind of know the struggle, but the word balance, I think, is very subjective. I think it depends on you, on how you actually define that, and you have to find that right space for you. uh, you know, And I do agree, Sangeeta, with your dad that with your dad, that you do make the choice, okay, and because it's your choice, as I said, so you have to have the bravery of knowing what your limits is, right? So if this is, and you don't define your success based on how other people define your success, you define your own success, because that is what actually really matters, rather than somebody say, oh, you're only successful if you become a CEO or something. No, only if you feel that that is what the successful means, right? So I think we have to be courageous, we have to be brave, to define our own success and actually fight for it. I mean, make your own choices, and it's okay if you make wrong choice, pivot, it's okay. Not to worry. Yeah, but doing your professional accountancy, I think, is a very good first step. Technically, there is no other experience or no other exposure, I think, that can cover that for sure. And character development and managerial ability, I mean, also I just can't see any other thing, to me lah, personally, that actually will give you that kind of good foundation, so that you then have these really great years after that to actually create your own success and your own path and journey. So I wish everybody all great success, actually, by your definition, not other people's definition. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shanas, for that sharing. Yeah, so I agree. Tough love from my parents certainly sort of molded the person that I am today. There were many times that I wanted to quit, back down, change paths, but I think they usually use this reverse psychology on me and kind of challenge me to and push me to do better. And while there were a lot of comments, sometimes in our profession we work long hours, and there's usually a stereotype put to us that we can't do it, like it's something that's predominantly suitable for males. And I think not so much here in Malaysia, but then I had the chance to work on projects overseas before, like in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, and they were shocked to see that my whole team was an all females team. And they were just like wondering how is that acceptable practice, and how do families and how do bosses tolerate having females on their team, because they just had this point of view or mindset that women are, they have to leave by 5 o'clock, they have children, they have to cook, clean, things like that. So I think in that sense, Malaysia is a lot more progressive. Companies here are a lot more progressive. So yeah, I think we have taken the first step, and like to a brighter future to all of us, provided that we stay on that track, right? So I'll just like to sum up some of the great points that our panelists had shared with us before we move on to the Q&A section. So we looked at how leaders are formed, like there should be strong foundations in terms of skills and values. So it's important that you build those core skills, be competent and have technical skills, be good listeners, be able to communicate well. So I think that's something that the professional body offers. They give you plenty of opportunity to sort of build on your communication skills and presentation skills that is going to be very useful as you enter the workforce. We also heard our speakers talk about how tone at the top is important in terms of developing this environment or working environment that is equal for both male and females. And as you move up the career ladder, just to keep that in mind as well, so that you continue harnessing that whole process. Also, Shanas mentioned that, to be a strong leader or to be a successful one, you have to have passion in your career, which I completely agree. And I got, in the short span that we had spent time with her last week, just before this forum, we got an idea of how passionate she is about the work that she does, and she's constantly striving for change. And that is definitely something that I want to work on as well on my own self. Support system is important. So try and find a support system that works for you, that is going to push you to be a better version of yourself. And if you do not see that happening in your workplace, seek for help. Yeah, and also character development, I guess. Yeah, so courage and building on that strength. So these are all key takeaways for you guys. Now let's probably move on to the Q&A. Let me just open up the chat to see if there's any questions. Yep, so we have a question here. There's always this negative perception where men always hate female bosses or leaders, still very prevalent in Asian culture, sadly, seen as bossy and aggressive and forward. I've also seen hiring managers do not want to hire females between the age of 28 to 35, knowing that they'll be married and eventually resign. This kind of women biases taunt a lot of women in our generation. I think, does anyone have comments on this one, like to add on or probably help to give some advice on how they can mitigate these biases at the workplace?
Okay, maybe I can say something.
Yeah.
That perception, I guess, yes, I've heard about it, quite common, yeah. Why is that? I guess, you know, like it could be that whatever, you know, the woman sitting up there, they are portrayed differently. It could be that way, yeah. And it's also, I think, how we ourselves, we cannot, you know, when people say that, what do we do? Do we say, yeah, I totally agree with you? Do we say that? Do we do that or not? You know, we consciously actually tend to agree with that comment. You know, I think we shouldn't do that. We cannot say this is a real stereotype. They are saying, you know, all female bosses are horrible bosses. They are very fierce, you know. And what do? We tend to say agree, right? So we should make the first step and say no. I think, you know, we have to correct that kind of perception. Otherwise, it will not stop. I think it will not stop. Yeah. And I at the end of the day is how we portray ourselves as a leader. Say, for me, I'm the head of tax for the Deloitte Malaysia. Some people see me as being very fierce. Some people see me as being very, very strict. But there are also people who see me as having the softer side of it. So I guess and people tend to generalize everything, yeah. And you know, when they are in that particular situation, then they will you know, label it that way. I guess so, yeah. But I think for us, most important thing is that when that statement is out there, we ourselves we cannot be, you know, consciously supporting that sort of statement. I must say, yeah. I don't know, anyone else, Cheryl or Shana, do you agree or not?
Yeah, I certainly agree with what you say, because these are labels. And I mean, we are all guilty of putting labels, because that's how we are wired to be able to look at someone or something and make certain judgment based on our past experience, right? So I think the important thing for us is to make sure that we are behaving professionally, right? So that we do not fall into those stereotypes, and make sure that the way we are working as a leader, we are doing the right thing at the right time. Because like what Pang Gek said, you know, to a certain extent, yes, we have to be strict. We have to enforce certain things in a particular way, right? I mean, that's our job. You know, things like controls, you know, compliance and things like that, right? But in different circumstances, we can show our empathy, the softer side, and so on, because that's what you know, the situation demands, right? So, but the problem is that when we are showing the stern side, people latch on to say, see, that's a stereotype. That's what women are. But you know, actually, men would do the same. It's just that it's expected of them, and maybe because of the cultural perception, it's normal, so therefore people don't harp on it and make a big fuss about it, right? But I also want to talk about the part where we said, you know, hiring of people, women who, you know, we expect them to get married and have children, and therefore they will leave or they can't commit and so on. I faced that before, in the sense that sometimes my team, when they're hiring, is, oh, you know, maybe, you know, they will, you know, get pregnant and so on. For me, I always tell them, we have no guarantee that people who are not going to get married is going to stay with you. We have no guarantee that anyone who is not going to get pregnant and all that is going to be a good performer, right? We give equal opportunity. We hire them on their own merits. And so be it if they're going to leave because that's their choice. But as long as we are able to use these resources in the right way, and if they're able to contribute positively to us during that particular period they're with us, we have gained as an organization, and as a professional, we would have gained from learning from them. Like what Shana said, we are learning from the younger ones, right? So I think it's important for us to guide ourselves as well as the people we work with, that we should not think too long. Nobody stays with you for the next 20 years anyway nowadays, right? They would leave one way or another for other reasons anyway. So don't let that hamper us in getting in a great person just because we think that they are going to, get married, get pregnant, or leave us. So that's how I tell myself and my team as well.
Can I just probably add a couple of points? One is actually I want to, Cheryl's first point is that it's not a question of a female or a male boss. Everybody will have their own traits and character, right? Actually. So, but it's normally if a man is stern, he's firm. But if a female is stern, she's a bitch, right? So it's it's just how people like to word this stuff. So I really agree with Kwang. It's actually about how do we change our society, actually. How do we change our narrative around this? Because it's actually about leveraging each individual's strengths, right? And differences actually makes better rather than everybody's the same, to be honest. And being a good leader is certainly how to say so if you are in a position that you're going to be a boss, so certainly it's your accountability and responsibility to make sure that you can actually be a good leader. But the first thing about being a good leader is knowing who's actually you're leading. Right? And if people who are actually you are leading, when they have this perception, it's maybe because they don't feel that you've listened enough from them, like you've not been listening, like what are their needs, or how can you actually create an environment that makes them be better, right, at their jobs, right? So I think we have perception is perception lah. So everybody got to change that perception by reality, right? So how do you actually do in the reality? To me, I also take responsibility as a follower, even if, whoever my bosses are. I mean, believe me, whatever you do, even as an entrepreneur, you got a boss. Like my boss is my daughter right now. Okay. So, yeah, but I really have to, then you take a position of that, also getting to know them, right? Because that's how you probably can work best. So it's a question of who has to be better at the end of the day. I mean, you can control yourself only lah. So you will make yourself better so that the situation is not, it becomes better. But I just want to share a little bit of anecdote about this hiring manager who doesn't want to hire females. In one of my companies, I was a CFO then, and I happened to have like 90% of my finance were females. Because, I recruit based on merit, right? I wasn't even thinking gender. I was thinking based on merits lah, and competencies, right? And then I actually got a note from a HR manager and told me that you actually have a risk because you really have a high fear. I said, what's my risk? The risk is everybody get pregnant at the same time and then go on maternity leave at the same time. Okay, fine. So I call everybody and I say, okay, how do we deal with this, right? So we actually solve it together. Okay, so everybody take turns, right? So, I mean, it's just to prove a point that it actually can be done. Yeah, so that the risk doesn't happen, doesn't materialize. I mean, to be fair, I thank the HR manager because I think it was a risk worth highlighting to me. But the point is that we can take whatever that is and actually solve it together and just mitigate the risk. I mean, you know what I mean? Because so that's just to share, but we didn't hire based on gender, so we were in that situation, but you make sure that the risk doesn't happen in that sense, right? So kind of thing. And yeah, today I think people stay in their job like, I think 4 to 5 years only, I think right now. I think that's the average. Right, so nobody stays 10, 20 years anymore, Kwangge. Too long. So okay. So yeah, so I think the resignation is actually not a question of gender. I think even male, female is the same. But the risk of that is just let's mitigate it. It's okay. You can actually manage it. It's just an interesting thing that happened to me like 10 years ago. But yeah, to prove a point can be done. Not a problem.
All right, we have about 7 minutes left. Maybe I'll take another question. So I saw an interesting one. How would you describe your leadership style? Is it different from your male counterparts? If so, what are the differences that you have experienced?
Okay, maybe I start first. I don't think I have a word to describe my leadership style. It's hard to find a word, but there are certainly differences between men and women, like everybody said that, right? And we just have to accept that, embrace that, and be better. That's all to me. To me as women, I think sometimes we are afraid to show our vulnerability. Yeah, we are afraid to do that. We have to, sometimes, I just want to share one experience. We recently have a woman leading age program, yeah, where we have we got a group of potential senior managers to be enrolled in this program, and this was specifically just for women. And then in one of the session, there was a story. We gave a story about a particular female individual, how she has moved up the ranks. She came from a very poor background. She worked so hard, and then she climbed up the corporate ladder. So then we asked everyone, what would you think is her traits, her character? And all the words that came up is like confident, aggressive, strict, and so on. But you don't see words like having compassion, being a good listener. Why is that so? It seems that, we saying that all these values are not good? So like what I think Shana says just now, right? We have these are not weaknesses. Women has these special qualities, and we have to, take advantage of it. You can be a very good listener. I like to believe that. I think I see a lot of women leaders out there. They are more better listener, I think, and take an advantage of that. You show your empathy, you exercise your EQs, and then you will build a great team to work with you. Yeah. Cheryl and Shana, what do you think?
Yeah, I certainly agree with you, Kwangge. And I think it's important for us. I mean, we are women. We embrace our femininity as well and use that to our advantage. In terms of how my leadership style is different from my male counterparts, I've been told that I uphold very high standards, which means that people probably have some words for me behind my back. But I think like what Shana said, if a male exercises that same characteristics, the label is a bit different, right? So I don't really think about how my leadership style differs, but probably being an accountant, we are more sensitive to the details and so on. So I guess that makes it different, but that's because of my profession rather than my gender. So I don't really have any particular thought about how different my leadership style is versus a man. Maybe Shanas, you want to chip in?
Yeah, actually, I would have difficulty to differentiate, because for me, my leadership style also, what's the word for it? For me, it's about being authentic, correct? So it's authenticity. I mean, I try to be who I am, and and I try to treat, and people say the best HR policy for me is treat human like human beings, right? So so whoever, that I'm leading one way or another, organization, team, projects, whatever, at the end of the day, everybody are human beings, and so I would treat everyone like human beings. So maybe therefore I'm also adaptive in that sense, but I focus a lot on trying to, I guess, get the best out of everybody. So I try to be really, really authentic in trying to do that. But is it different from any of my male counterparts? To be honest, I can't quite say, because there are some male leaders who are actually quite good at it as well, right? So, you know, one of my partners, I always tell him, I think you're a woman, lah, really, you know. But I mean, it's a joke, you know, because he's probably more detailed than me, you know, for example. So, but so I don't think it's about gender. You know, leadership style is something that you can then develop. But for me, I start with authenticity, because I think the best way to get the strength is when you actually do have that strength, right? So you then leverage on that, you know, and get the best out of everyone, including yourself. Um, but yeah, but does that mean it's differentiating from the male? Not quite. I have seen males who probably does that way better than me also. I learn from everyone, male or females. It doesn't matter.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Do we have time for another question, or are we moving to the picture session?
Yeah, I think it's 1 minute before 1, so I would think you can wrap up if that's okay with you guys.
Yep, all good.
Sure, sure.
Okay, so I think we had some really great points earlier from all our panelists. In fact, if I were to take this question myself, probably I would think that while everyone thinks female are so nitpicky, I feel like female leaders usually have a tendency to or being more protective of their team from observation. So when shit hits the fan, you see the female leaders being protective of their team a lot more than the their male counterparts. They tend to be like, oh yeah, things happen. The team, you know, they tend to sort of push it back to the team. So I think while we are nitpicky, while we can be like, you know, very strict, there's a reason behind it, and also like we have our teams back a lot most of the time. I can't speak for everyone, but I think most females leader would agree with me. So I hope you guys had a wonderful sharing experience and you enjoyed this forum thoroughly. I know that I did. There's lots that I've learned, and I hope you guys picked at least a couple of things from this session. Thank you very much. I hope you had fun, and happy Women's Day. Off to you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta, our moderator of the day. And of course, to all panelists for their great sharing. I must say it was really an insightful forum.